discussion is with regards to International Women's Day, and the global campaign for this year is #BreakTheBias. So we are all here asking our audience who's listening to us to join us in breaking the bias. Whether you are a man or a woman, today is the day that you break the bias. So we urge you, go online in your community or simply your immediate environment and spread the word. Well, without further delay, let me begin with introducing to you these wonderful women who have joined me virtually today. They are the global advisors of our network, and definitely from visuals only, we can say that we have a diverse and inclusive board of women at WIFIN. So to my global advisors, when I introduce you, just give us a virtual wave so our audience know you. We have Katrina. She is the Senior Vice President, Portfolio Manager and Investment Strategist at Franklin Templeton. We've got Rebecca Sin. She is our ETF analyst at Bloomberg. We've got Vahangwile Hangwi Manavela. She is the partner and head of ESG at iQualitas Capital. Ladies, we are happy to have you and thank you for accepting our invitation. And it's an honor to host you on WIFIN's platform. Yes, so like I have been discussing and saying that we are here to break the bias. Now, perhaps most of us have to agree that gender biases, whether they are conscious or unconscious bias, or even stereotypes, it has been somehow deeply ingrained in our working norms or in just the way we behave or react to things, whether it's in our immediate environment or at the workplace. And so today, this conversation with you, and we are hoping that we're able to dive into your individual lives, whether it's personal or professional, and get your insights about how you and leaders of your kind have been breaking the biases, you've been impacting lives, right? And you've been committed in making the workplace and the society more inclusive. So I'm going to ask my first question to the global advisors. What does the International Women's Day mean to you? Let me begin with Rebecca.
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you. Thank you so much for joining us here today. We're very excited to be on this panel that they've organized. So I guess for me, International Women's Day means to celebrate all the success we've had, but also to recognize that we're still very far away from where we need to be, and that we need everyone, each and every one of you, whether you're male, female, young, old, analyst, managing director, to assist and work on this together so that we can build a better tomorrow. So ultimately, it's a day to celebrate the success we've had, but also a day to remind us that there's still a lot that can be done, and we need everyone to work on it together.
Great. Thank you. Let's hear from Hangwi.
Thank you. I think, I agree with Rebecca. It's more time to reflect on our success and what we have achieved. And sometimes I think we also underestimate what we have achieved. Looking back at our kind of like a previous generation, you will realize that the women during that time have gone through a lot. And yes, we still have a long way to go, but the reality is like we've also done a lot. But I think for me personally, it's also time to sit down and reflect and take stock on some of the challenges that women are still facing today. And sometimes if you are maybe in the city or somewhere in your home, you tend to forget that women are still going through a lot, and there's still a lot of women with no voice. And I think that's the time where we also need to think about them, to say, what do we really need to do to those women who are still struggling in silence or in rural areas or wherever they are that doesn't really have voice? What are the challenges that women globally are facing today? Especially, I mean, you look at the situation now with COVID. I think the people who have been affected most were women as well. So I think a day like this make you sit down and reflect as well. And I think I like the topic in terms of like, how do we really challenge the biasness? Because I think that's one thing that is really blocking the progress of women today.
Yeah. I'm going to take 1 minute, ladies and gentlemen, to introduce to you Winnie. Winnie, she's joined us finally. She's also part of our global advisors. Winnie is the head of market structure for EII Markets and investment at BlackRock. Winnie, welcome and thank you. I know you've had a busy day. Thank you so much for making time. Basically, we are asking our global advisors what's their thoughts of what does International Women's Day mean to them. So let's take your insights on that, and then we'll move to Katrina.
Thank you, Dikshita. I'm sorry I'm late in joining. It is truly a pleasure to be here, to be speaking to all of you. I think International Women's Day to me is recognition of the fact that we exist. We are 50% of the population, of the world's population. We have achieved many things in many different spheres of life. It is also a day which to me feels there is hope for our future, for an equal treatment, for a future which we'll consider as equals as we continue to push our path forward.
Thank you. Katrina?
I think everyone's really focused so nicely on what we're talking about today and what we're recognizing in terms of both the challenges that have faced women and the achievements we've achieved today. The way I look at International Women's Day is try and fast forward us. And I'd actually like a day when it doesn't exist, where we don't need to, the women are equal, that they have the voice that is heard, and that they have gender equality, and that we're in that place where, gender is not something that we think about, specifically women versus men. We think about all genders and all people together. So I have that optimistic, I'm an equity investor, glass is always half full view of International Women's Day. So I really do appreciate and do respect the struggles and everything. And I think it's so important to have a day now where we're highlighting this. But when I think about highlighting it, I'm really very focused on highlighting it so that we can change the world and hopefully, as I said, move us forward to a day where we just celebrate all genders together.
Thank you very much, ladies. Moving on, my next question is to Hungry. All right, so over the years now, as you all have been sharing with us as well, we have become more conscious about diversity and inclusion, and leaders have become more conscious than ever in challenging their own thinking processes, as well as that of their team and the environment that they are building at their workplace, to ensure that we are all mindful of bias in our decision making. Now, Hungry, yourself, you are one of the leading person of iQualities Capital. Let me ask you, why do you support women's empowerment and gender equality? And have you seen its positive impact in your life and work? You're on mute. I know it's the most famous line.
I thought it won't happen today, but I'm sorry. So I think, I've been reflecting in terms of like, why do I do what I do in terms of like supporting women? And I've been in this industry probably for quite some time now, where part of my responsibility is to drive gender diversity. But I think like what Katrina said, we really want to drive to that world where you are not identified based on your gender, but identified based on your capabilities. because I think it's also that drive that say women are capable and women can do better, not because they are women, but because they are human beings. And if you go back, if we look at the kind of education that we get, there is no special education for women. So why now, when we get to the workplace or we get to the leadership role or wherever we are, we now start separating women and gender and men and say, well, this job is capable for men and this job is not capable for men. And I'll just reflect. Last week I was in one of our projects in the continent. I won't mention exactly where. It was a construction site. Out of the more than 13 people that have seen on the site, I could only see one woman. And then I asked to say, where are the women? Because we have so many women in construction all over the continent. And the men were like, oh no, this job is hard. I said, what is hard about it if we all have the same futures? So I think those are the things that we really want. We want women to be free to do what they like, not being channeled because of their agendas. And I think that's why we really do this empowerment work. And we also want to start seeing women. One thing that is really shocking as well is the statistics of women in leadership. Katrina mentioned, I think it was Win who mentioned that we are over 50% of the population, or we are 50% of the population. But does the statistics represent the 50%? No. I mean, if you look at the leadership position globally, we are still CEO position, if I have to single one position, we're still sitting at below 10%, which is something that is really a concern. And that's why you will really want to push, you will really want to be a voice of those people who don't have voice. Even in the workplace, when you see a woman being oppressed, you really want to kind of like talk about it, because it's not something that should happen in this day and age. So I think that's why you'll find that we are pushing that. Are we winning? I don't think we can say we are not winning. It's just that sometimes the work is so much that the progress is so minimal, but there is progress. It has to be documented. I think there was a study that was also done in the investment where it reflects that when women are in leadership position or women are in board position, they have seen a significant amount of good governance within those companies as well. And I think that reflects the nature of women being good organizers, good governors, and all those things. So I think that there is progress. It will take us time. And I think that time we just wish if it can be sooner, or if our children generation can't go through the same stereotype that our parents, our grandparents, and our generation are still experiencing today. So yes, the progress is there, we have seen it, but there's still a lot of work that needs to be done.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Hungry. Very sure that you've been breaking biases at your environment and all. But I'm going to ask you this, Hungry. What do you define as a bias, and has it ever affected your career throughout? And if yes, then how did you tackle that?
I wouldn't think there's a woman who will stand up and say my career haven't been affected by the biasness. And I think from the beginning where we spoke about conscious and unconscious biasness, that probably are some of the challenges. I mean, as a mother, as a woman, you will be discriminated because at some point you fall pregnant and go away and take that maternity leave, where people will feel like if we put her in a leadership position, what's going to happen when she has to be a mother? I think those are the biasness that come. Or maybe you are applying for a role where they feel like only men can handle this position. So that biasness, it can be stereotype, their biasness where they just feel like, with the example that I gave you, that women are not suitable for this position, or women are just caregivers in nature. So whenever they give you a role, they give you a role that you will be caregiving, or when you really have to stand up. And especially I remember a case where I had to stand up and discipline, and everyone look at you and say, why are you doing this? You are also a mother. Why are you not feeling for this person? And then the question is like, but the person has done something wrong, and I have to take my responsibility as a leader, and justice need to be done. But people don't expect you, when it's done by men, it's acceptable. It's something that nobody will complain. But the worst thing with this thing that we're dealing with, the biasness, women tend to criticize other women as well. I think that's one thing that as much as we'll talk about men and all those things in terms of this gender equality, we sometimes are our own perpetuators, and we perpetuate these things ourselves. So I think that's one thing that we need to start addressing as well, to say we need to trust and support each other as well. But I think like I said, the biasness, you get it at home, where if you wake up in the morning and the child is sick, you are expected to stay from work, not your husband. So nobody will expect your husband not to go to work. They will always say, oh, no, it's fine, you can call your boss. The other day I said, you can also call your boss and say, because I have to go to work, I've got other important meetings to do, but it's not accepted. It's something that will be challenged all the time. And I know you will have to pay for it, but sometimes you just have to be firm and know that if we both career women, let's take each other serious as well. So that's what I'm saying. This biasness, this stereotype, sometimes we perpetuate it ourselves, where automatically we will volunteer to say, oh, because the child is sick, I'll call my boss. Why not wait for the other person to volunteer as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all right. I see both roles. Thank you, Hungry. I would equally like to have Winnie's point of view on this question. Specifically because Winnie herself, she's of Indian nationality, and then she started her career in the UK, and now she's in UK, right? And then, yeah.
I started my career in India.
Okay, India, and then she moved, and now she's living in Hong Kong. I mean, you are a woman that has been through different countries, and you've been working in different, regions and countries, and it is not that simple as it may seem and sound. So has there been biases that you've faced? And if you've encountered such a bias through your professional journey, how did you tackle that?
It's interesting because I've probably faced, so I started my career in India, as you say, and I was, in a batch of, I was hired a graduate batch of a large investment bank back in Mumbai, and in a batch of like 40 people who were hired, there were 5 women. So I was one of the 5 women, and you walk into this trading floor one fine day after, your college education and everything, and you realize that the entire trading floor is actually 90% women. There's like very, very small minority of women. So I think biases were very existent and very, very prevalent everywhere. The question was, how do you let it affect you? How did it affect you, and how do you get out of it? Like, it's about your perspective as well. A, recognizing what is happening. B, how do you get out of that? How do you break out of it? So while I recognized what was happening around me, my focus was very much on delivering on my career and not getting inhibited and not getting narrowed or bottled up by the fact that I was a woman, but thinking of myself, I am here, I am doing this job, and I'm here because I am qualified and capable of it. As I grew in my career, and as you mentioned, for the first time when I went to the UK, I felt it as a huge culture shock, because for me, it was my first time ever having grown up in India to get to this country where everybody suddenly seemed way more beautiful and cleaner and tidier and nicely dressed than I was. And then everybody spoke really fast English. And I was like, wait, I don't understand. I don't really fit in here. Which led to a reverse bias in my own head, where I started feeling smaller about myself. And it took me a while. It took me, a couple of months to actually break out of it and start making friends, and the medium of connection was probably Indian food for me back in the UK, because English people love their Indian food. So that helped me break out of it and like make a few friends. And that helped me realize that nobody can help you until you recognize what the bias is and you try to help yourself or ask for help or reach out to help. And back in the day, trading floors did not have any women. And that's when I recognized what was happening to me. And I made it a thing for myself that, you know, I'm going to make sure that every time a person of a different culture is on this trading floor, I'm going to reach out and be friends with them, because they're probably feeling exactly the same way I felt when I walked into this place, or at some point they have felt. And same thing, when you go into the meeting rooms, you will realize that there are plenty of women who are just not able to voice themselves because there are 7 men in the room and they just genetically have higher and bigger voices. And if they haven't spoken in the first 15 minutes, it is highly unlikely that a woman is going to speak. So you have to stop, give a person who is relatively quieter a chance and opportunity to speak, whether it's a woman or a person of different culture or a person of different, you know, any kind of different orientation than yourself. It's about recognizing what your bias and what the room's bias is and trying to break that bias to help yourself grow as an individual and help that person grow. Because at the end of the day, we are equals and we want to create a place where everybody is treated equally and has an equal voice.
Powerful. Thank you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, of course, breaking the bias is a real conversation. And we've done a lot. We have to agree that over the years now, a lot of initiatives, a lot of work has been done in this area. However, sometimes probably we when we think about it right now, you know, the pandemic, we've been through crisis in the past few years, and it has had certain effects on women and their careers. Now, there is one particular conversation that I'm very interested in, which is the gender pay gap that very often we tend not to address. Could be because of underlying biases that we've been exposed to. But there are facts, there are data that show that the ineffectiveness in solving the gender pay gap issue or promoting women into leadership was simply, breaking the bias. Now, I would like to address this to Katrina. Katrina, your recent book, which is Undiversified, the big gender short in investment management, has addressed this gender imbalance in portfolio management. And one of the key takeaways from the book, when I read it, was that diversity should be required in workforces as well as in portfolios, and more women in high-paying asset management careers can help close the gender pay gap. Now, my question to you is, how do you address this pressing issue that formed the background of the gender pay gap?
You asked the question about unconscious bias and the best way to address that, because we know now that bias training actually increases the amount of bias in an organization. It doesn't decrease it, which was a surprising finding. The fact is, data is the best defense against bias. And so we talk about it. In fact, we actually don't just talk about the pay gap. We talk about the 3 Ps. The first is the gap in pay. So women for the same job, so not even thinking about different levels of organizational achievement, but for the same job, women are paid less. And we think that we need to use our data, identify that pay gap, and then equalize it. Similarly, women, the gap between promotions is longer for women, and it's actually extended during COVID. I think 34% of men were promoted during COVID, just 9% of women. So women are promoted longer, and that means it takes them longer to get to that next level. And that next level obviously comes with higher levels of pay. And then finally, women for the same objective level of performance get paid less. And so if you get paid less in finance, a part of our compensation is a bonus. And so if you have a lower performance rating, you have a low bonus. And you take those things, lower pay, slower promotions, and lower performance ratings, and you put that into an MPV calculation. We're all in finance, we know how to do those, but you MPV a female career and it's lower. as a result of those three things. And so we are very, very frank in terms of, as in finance, we analyze data. Let's turn the lens inward and analyze our own data and then equalize. And the reason we talk about equalization is it's worked. MIT is the famous example where they looked at the lack of tenured professors that were women. And instead of just saying, let's have more tenured professors, which doesn't really work, they said, let's understand why. And they found that there was a gap at a key point in their career where they got smaller labs and fewer research assistants, and they equalized. And it's very hard to defend against equal opportunity and equal treatment. So from our point of view, we think that the starting point to address a lot of the bias and to address a lot of the inequality comes from equalizing those three Ps.
Interesting. Thank you, Katrina, for sharing these views. I'm going to move to my next question, and I'm going to address that to Rebecca. Definitely, we all know you are very vocal and passionate about diversity and inclusion. It clearly shows, through your engagements on WIFIN or Women in ETFs and other engagements that you've been doing. At the same time, you are an ETF analyst at Bloomberg. So many of the people hear Bloomberg and, they just strike their mind, wow, ETF analyst at Bloomberg. What happens is that as much as it's interesting and sounds good, quite often we do face negative stereotypes of feminism at the workplace. So what, according to you, can be the most effective ways to counteract the negative stereotypes of feminism at the workplace, especially in this industry that we belong to?
I think prior to joining Bloomberg, when I was actually in equity traders, I faced more stereotypes because, as Winnie was saying, there aren't many females on the trading floor. And I'm sure Katrina, as a portfolio manager, can speak to this. But ultimately, when you're on the trading floor, especially for equities, I remember when I first started my career, I was in London, and it's one of the largest trading floors in the world. And I was only one of 3 females at a very large bank. And that was as an analyst. By the time I had left, I was the only female trader left on the floor because other people had retired or they've moved on to different jobs. People at different points in the career end up falling off for whatever reasons. And so in terms of stereotypes, I'd say as equity traders, you probably face the most challenges. But I think a few things that are important for people that are either starting their career or in their careers. One, ultimately, if you perform, you will succeed. So ultimately, you need to perform, you need to do really well. You need to, constantly have that drive and motivation to do well. And a second point is to stay positive and to keep trying, being persistent. I don't know how many times people have told me and said, oh, you can't do that, or said, no, that's not possible. But because I persevered and I kept trying, I was able to accomplish that. So having a positive attitude is definitely very important. And then a third point would be to trust in yourself. If you have the faith to believe in yourself and think that you can do it and that you can accomplish it, even though if people say no, you still will succeed because you trust in yourself. And I think another point along that is oftentimes people say no, and it's okay to ask for help. You don't need to do it all on your own. As a female, people always think that, I have to do everything myself and I can't ask for help. But especially with COVID right now, whether it's work from home, taking care of children, family situation, oftentimes if you do have kids, it falls on the mother or the wife to take care of the kids. But oftentimes you can ask the husband or your partner to pitch in. And so I think that's really important, knowing when you need help and being willing to ask for that. And I'd say the last point is, if you fail, try again. Like, I failed so many times in all the different things I've tried. I've tried numerous times where I tried to do something and people were like, no, you can't do that. And you know what? It turns out they were right. You can't do that. And I failed. But the thing is, whenever you fail, you need to keep trying. And I think that's really important. Don't give up after one time. Sometimes it may take 3, 5, or even 10 times to be successful. And you learn a lot from those mistakes that you make. And so I think keeping those things in mind will ultimately break a lot of the stereotypes that you have, but also lead to you being successful.
Thank you, Rebecca, for getting things in order. I believe your views are really going to go a long way, impacting a lot of behaviors and conversations. And I think the drive is believing in yourself. And if you failed, try again, and let's keep pushing. Thank you. I think we're gonna discuss about that later on in another episode. I'm gonna come back to Katrina. Yes, it is a male-dominated industry. We know it. We've seen the data, we've seen the facts. And as much as a lot of initiatives have been put towards diversity, equity, and inclusion at the workplace, a lot more is left to do. Now, I do remember very clearly in one of the first conversations you and I had, and you pointed out how important the role of men is in achieving diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I quote you that men are not our enemies and they are our allies. And I completely agree with this statement, that effective changes can only be made when men become our allies. Now, let me ask you, how do we make men our allies? What can they do to help us achieve this equality that we're talking about?
Yeah, you're right. Men are our allies in this journey. They cannot be perceived as our enemies. And we wrote the entire book with the idea that it is not about blaming men for the lack of gender equality in investment management. It's about identifying the problem and then moving forward. And that's what we all want to achieve, is moving forward with this. In terms of developing men as our allies, it is basically communicating that message that we see you as partners in this journey, and we think that you can play a very important role. And I think that we need to differentiate between the three roles that men and women can play. The first is allies. So they're people that are aligned with the progression of women and the advancement of women. So going back to Hungwei's, I'm sorry, I just said that completely wrong. I apologize. But you're looking at that idea of bringing another seat to the table, making sure that women's voices are heard. So encouraging women to speak up. That's an allyship. It is really just going that little bit, that extra step, and identifying some of those areas. Maybe women, we know that there's a confidence deficit within women, and so helping them to overcome that and showing that their voices will be listened to and heard, and encouraging them to speak. So I think that that's allyship. And then men also can be both mentors and sponsors. We're in an industry where 10% of portfolio managers are women, so most likely at least one of our mentors will be a man. And mentors are a person that you can go to and talk about your career. I mentor a number of young women at Franklin Templeton across our organization, not just within my division, and they will talk to me about things such as how to ask for a pay rise, how to ask for a promotion, where their career is going, and what thoughts I have. And that's a mentorship relationship. The final area where women need to also work, and men can have a role here, is in sponsorship. So a mentor is someone who talks about you when you're in the room. A sponsor is someone who talks about you when you're not in the room. And men can be sponsors, women can also be sponsors. And those sponsors are the people who actively promote women to move up in the organization. So if there's a manager role that's open, they're making sure that women are being considered for that promotion, just not the men in the room. So there's a lot of really good things that can be done. I think that this is a game, as we say, of inches. It's going to be a lot of smaller things. There is no kind of one magic bullet that's going to solve the lack of diversity. But I think if we're all working together and working together to advance women and to achieve equality, I ultimately think we can get there.
Okay, thank you, Katrina. I'm sure we all have taken note of this. And so to the audience here, whether men or women, let us remember this conversation, and every step we move forward in our professional and personal lives. There's a lot of things, and Katrina has mentioned sponsorship, mentorship. I think the young girls here as well, take note of that. I'm very sure it's going to help you a long way. So we're coming close towards the end of this panel discussion, and I'm going to come back to you, Winnie. We've joined here virtually to celebrate the International Women's Day. And a lot has been discussed and shared, and I believe we all have learned a lot from this discussion of today. But in order to really achieve equality, I believe that we need to look for long-term solutions. We need to see solutions that impact not just for the now, but also for the decades to come. So my question to you is, what more can we do to create such lasting change?
I think as Katrina said as well, there's a lot that is being done by organizations, by a number of organizations putting thresholds on, diversity ratios, creating and attracting more women into the workforce, and, bringing in numbers to create an equal commonplace. But I think what we're missing is there is diversity is one part of it, inclusion is second. So while we have a lot of pressure and tone from the top in a number of places changing, first of all, yes, tone from the top is what we need to change, because it is the leadership at the top which has to recognize that there is an issue. One, when we realize there is an issue, how do we solve it? Now we're getting to a point where in some places where we have some realization that this needs to be solved, which is why there are threshold number quotas percentages on how we need to increase the percentage of women in the workforce. But more importantly, are women feeling included? Are we actually truly empowering women to be able to voice themselves, to be able to sing from their own songbook, to be able to freely express their feminine self, bring 100% of them to the table and feel like an equal? I think that's a very big gap that needs to be bridged. That is called empowerment. And that is what we need. That is where we come back full circle to mentors, sponsors, allies in the workforce. And we need all of them to A, recognize step one, that there is an issue. B, solution to the issue is not just putting numbers in place, but actually recognizing what we need to truly empower women and bring that forward for a lasting change.
Great. I remember reading something that says diversity is like being invited to the party, but inclusion is being asked to dance, right? I think that really resonates with what you said. Thank you, Winnie. This is really good advice, and I hope that this works for all of us here. Please do share your thoughts. We would love to hear from you as well, your thoughts on creating lasting change in achieving equality. Please use the chat box, and we'll be moderating that chat box as well. Now, my very last question for today is directed to Rebecca. We have here we have plenty young women and matured women amongst us today. And as a major giveaway, we would like to have your insights on having a successful career in finance and investment, or other fields of professions, of course. We would like to hear from you, from your experience. So if you are to share with us a strategic plan that helped you succeed in your career, what would that be? What's your advice for us?
So this may be the wrong question for me, because I never had a strategic plan. And so whenever people ask me this question, I tell them the story. I ended up in finance purely by accident. And so in university, I studied mechanical engineering and math. I did an engineering internship 1 year, and then I did a finance internship the following year. And I really liked finance. And then that's how I got into finance. I joined a bank through their global markets training program and did rotations through different desks, so sales, trading, structuring. And then that's how I ended up becoming a trader, because I had the quantitative skills. And so for me, I never really planned this journey of going into finance. It just kind of happened by chance. And so what I tell people is that I think I've been able to be successful in my career because I've always had very good mentors and very good bosses. And Katrina alluded to this, that by having good mentors and people that you trust in, they can make you a better they not only make you a better person, but they also make the job that you do a lot easier and a lot more enjoyable. And so my advice to people is always like, find something that you're passionate about and that you like doing, and then the rest will work out on its own. And so if I were to come up with a strategic plan or, give some advice, I'd say find something that you like, that you're passionate about, and people that you trust in, and good people to work for. So for instance, if you have a really good boss, it makes a huge difference. Or if you can find good mentors that can give you advice about, whether it's personal, career, or whatever advice you need, it can be very helpful. And so I don't think I necessarily had a plan to go into finance. It just kind of happened, but I was ultimately very fortunate to have a lot of good people around me.
Great, thank you, Rebecca. Anyone else that would like to add to this question? Whether we have, or you had, a strategic plan in succeeding in this field? Anyone? I mean, if there is
plan, but I would say something that has helped me a lot recently is having my own personal board of directors. As an individual, I decided that I will find five people who I truly trust, and they can be from any field. They don't have to be at work. They don't have to be in finance. They can be, it can be your mom. It can be your best friend. It could be anyone. But you identify 5 people who you are truly honest with, and you decide that you will speak once a month to them, and you tell them, and you will share with them what are your frustrations in your career, in your health, in your life, and your financial situation. 3 things that matter most in life, right? Your mental space, your health and well-being, your financial well-being, and how you're enjoying your day-to-day life. And as I started sharing with them on a more regular basis, truly how I was feeling, I realized I got their perspective on what matters, how to be more authentic about myself, and how to bring 100% of that authenticity to work as well. It made me a more honest person at work who was able to bring and reflect my thoughts, what I was feeling, with other people as well. If there were issues being a woman related to career or my career growth, I wasn't alone. There were obviously 5 other women, or 3 of those women had either gone through the same thing or had advice from me on how should I be dealing with it, how should I be dealing with difficult colleagues, how should I be making friends at a new workplace. All of those questions were very organically answered. How to not bring your work stress home, how to be able to delink from it, because you will realize that you're not the only one who's going through it. And that helped me tremendously.
That's nice. Thank you, Winnie. I think we are coming close to this insightful panel discussion, and I would love to ask our Women in Finance and Investment Networks advisors, so my beautiful global advisors, on this special day that we are joined here to celebrate, what is your International Women's Day message for everyone? Hungry, let's hear from you.
Thanks. I think, the message that I would really want to share with the men is that sometimes we tend to take a lot, and we tend to want to be everything for everyone. And I always like I've watched the video by the former CEO of Pepsi, where he say, well, you can't be everything. You can't be everything for everyone. You can't have it all. And I think that has been my message to everyone at work, at home, with friends and everything, to say, I can't have it all. I have to choose what is more important to me. And I think sometimes you will also have to choose things that are not the most favorable to other people around you, but as long as it's important to you. So even in our career, for us to be able to grow, we need to learn to prioritize what is more important to us. And as long as at least we have an opportunity to support the people around us, especially the family, not neglect them, but you can't be in every event that is happening. And that's what we
Mhm.
intend to do. So we need to also look after our well-being. We need to look after ourselves as well. I think that's the most important message that I want to say to women today.
Thank you. Thank you, Hungry. Katrina, what's your message for us?
I think it's a great time to be a woman in finance at the moment. We've talked about so many of the diversity and inclusion initiatives. We've talked about the fact that companies are really focused on achieving gender equality in all areas of finance. We've talked about various companies and organizations here, but I do think that everyone is very focused on achieving gender parity. We're starting with the 30%, but hopefully, but even that, and when you talk to organizations that are part of organizing that 30% club, 30% is, as we say, the half marathon marker on a journey that is a marathon. So we're looking to get to that parity. So I would say that, yeah, I think it's just a great time to be a woman in finance, and I'm excited to move forward here.
Thank you, Katrina. Rebecca, what's your message for us?
I have to agree with Katrina. There's no better time to enter finance than now, simply because a lot of organizations are so focused on D&I and they have so many targets. So for instance, if I look at when I started my career, there was no such thing as D&I. That didn't really exist. There was no quota. There was no, trying to get to 30%. But I'd say for one thing, for all of you guys here today, if we all just commit to doing one thing to break the bias, then we'll all be better off. So after today, if everyone thinks of one thing they can do to break the bias, to whether that be, supporting women organizations, supporting each other, being a mentor, helping someone out, if everyone just does one thing, then overall it will be a better place for everyone. And so I'd say, think of one thing that you think you can do to break the bias and then work on that. That's my message for you today.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, Rebecca. Winnie, your message for us, please.
I mean, there's so many messages and takeaways that I am going to implement from here on. My message, and Rebecca alluded to a little bit earlier on, is don't be afraid to ask. Just ask. You know what you want. You know in your heart of hearts what you want. You always know what you want. Don't be afraid to ask. If there was a man on the table, they wouldn't shy away from asking exactly what they want. Be assertive and ask for what you want. That's the only way you get closer to what you want. If you don't ask, you'll never get. You're not moving forward to what you want without asking.
Yeah.
And I have to say, yeah, but Dikshita, I think also we'd love to know your piece of advice and what your message is as well. I'm probably talking on behalf of my fellow panelists here, but I think we'd love to hear that.
I think as we end this conversation, and as much as I love hearing from all of you, my piece of advice is that definitely we need to step up, and breaking the bias can be broken in a lot of angles. And if we just do one thing correctly and we are able to impact at least one individual's life, whether it's our peer or somebody working under us, or sometimes even the bosses, if we're able to deliver effectively to them, probably we can break the bias in a very effective way. So I think this would be my ending thoughts. As for women in finance, this whole movement that we're doing, I think our work is continuous. We've dedicated ourselves to grooming more women. So I think our work continues. My work in this in this area continues, and definitely I'm taking your advices in my next steps. Definitely looking forward to building some impacts, and I think it's a beautiful moment for all of us to reflect on what we've achieved and what more can be achieved. So that would be my ending thoughts. Thank you. All right, so we've come to the end of this discussion, ladies and gentlemen, and together I think we can definitely take it further and make more progresses in supporting women's rights, whether it's social, economical, cultural, and political. And I think one more thing that I would like to add is that education is very important. So many times educate the girls and educate the guys properly at home. And this is a message to parents. I think equality starts in your homes. So let's take that conversation ahead. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you. I see we've got a lot of very beautiful messages from our audience. I am going to take questions. We've dedicated a 5 minutes Q&A time. So if you've got any questions to ask our global advisors, please drop them in the Q&A box and we will be taking them. I see we've got one question from an anonymous attendee, and the person asked, how can I find out different salary payments for the same level in the same organization, as many HRs will typically treat such as confidential information, and this makes negotiation difficult? I think, Katrina, probably you'd like to take this question.
I do think the confidentiality is an issue. So the reason we have talked about it as being a responsibility at the corporate level. So the corporate can do that equalization without breaching that confidentiality is number one. Number two, there are a lot of surveys out there that are done about industry pay. And that's probably your best way of going in and talking to your current employer, because the fact is if they don't give you the next or the pay rise or pay you appropriately or at market for the work that you're doing, I can guarantee you there's another organization out there that will pay you. And so, yes, you may need to make a transition. You may need to move from company A to company B. But if company A is not recognizing your talents and if they're not paying you for those talents, I would say they may not be the company you really want to work for longer term, and making that switch over to company B that, you know, pays you for the talents and pays you for the work. I'd also like to say that this is an ongoing journey. We talk about equalizing and people think about it as it being a one-time equalization of the Ps, but the fact is this is an ongoing journey. You need to continually look at the data. I mean, I think Google is one that's done pay for the role, and even within a year of them getting to, you know, of doing that, they've seen that pay gap, you know, widen again, and they've got to go back and do it again. So that's the thing. This is an ongoing journey and something we've got to just continually work on.
Thank you, Katrina. I hope this answers your question. We've got another question from my dear friend. She's based in Kenya, I know her. She asked, as women on global seats, what are you each doing to extend the ladder to fellow women who are still striving to grow? I think this question goes for all of us. So just give me your views on it. Anyone?
Maybe just to come in there, I think, I mean, from my end, it's more around mentorship and support, where I'm in the field of ESG, and I think I've realized that it's a field that many people want to venture into it. But what I do on a regular basis is to provide mentorship and support for those young ones who want to venture, probably give them an opportunity to work alongside me and see if they're really interested in the field as well. And I think since I joined Equalitas, because with previous employers, not an easy way to do except through internship, but I've given a number of women an opportunity, even men, not only women, to just come work alongside me, see if something that they're interested. And some of them stay, some of them decide to say, you know what, let me go explore other things as well.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Hungry. Anything that we would like to hear from our advisors?
So someone just posted a question. What are some extra things you think mentees could do to get the most out of your mentors? And so I'd say ultimately, if you don't ask for help, your mentor isn't going to know what you need help with. Your mentor has a lot of experience in a wide range of areas, but you need to ask for it. And so don't feel like you can only contact them for like big problems. If you have day-to-day problems, the mentor, if they've signed up to be a mentor, they usually are willing to help. And so it might be as easy as sending a WhatsApp message, or, asking them how you can get a pay rise, promotion, or even something as small as, you're working on a project right now and you're running into some politics, internal politics within the company. How do I navigate that? So I'd say, ask for help, and they'll be willing to help you because they've ultimately signed up to be a mentor. And then I think going back to the other question, one thing I would say is ultimately a lot of females don't support other females. And so if you don't support other females, regardless of whether they're junior or senior, it's going to make it a lot harder. So we all need to support everyone regardless of, what their gender is.
Thank you, Rebecca. I think, okay, I'm not on mute. We've got a last question that we are going to take for today's discussion. It comes from Jeremiah. How can women make more allies for men to stop them thinking women are there to steal their jobs and importance in the society for peaceful coexistence?
I mean, let's be honest. I mean, if there are only 100 jobs and you need to achieve gender parity, and 90 of those jobs are held by men and 10 of them are held by women, the prospect is that 40 men will lose their position to achieve 50-50 balance. I understand the math, but the fact is if we have much more of a growth mindset, the way you can achieve more gender parity is just to make sure, when you either lose a male colleague or when you're growing the organization, is to focus more on adding women. Though it means that men are not losing out their jobs to women. And I just don't think that we should be in this. I mean, I run a value strategy, and we always talk about our growth counterparts. And I talk about the fact it's a complement. And the fact is, women are the complement to men. It's the same way that racial variety, and having diversity racially in a team is important because it's a complement to the team. It's the same way as having socioeconomic diversity is a complement to the team, and it makes the team better, and it makes everyone on the team better. And so I think that there's a couple of things. Yes, you can focus on the numbers, and that does look, fairly stark in that reality, but you can also focus on having either that growth perspective of growing the company that way, or the fact that having diversity just makes this a better company, better decisions. That's the benefit of diversity. And so it actually makes it a better and more sustainable company going forward, which benefits not just the women who are working there, it also benefits the men.
All right. Thank you, Katrina. I think we've already reached the end of our session. It's already 1. So I am going to, do we have more questions, by the way? I checked. Okay, we've got a question from Benjamin towards mentor and mentee, and he happens to deal with it after several years of local experience. What advice will you give to mine who wants to get to that global exposure that is working outside her jurisdiction, whether working in person or remotely? I'm not sure who to address this question to, but any of us, yeah?
I think if somebody wants to work into a global jurisdiction, I think nobody stops you from talking to people. Right? If I wanted to be a portfolio manager, nobody stops me from talking to Katrina, even though I have never been a portfolio manager, I've never been an investor. But I would give her a call and be like, "Hey, Katrina, what do you think I should do? What are the starting points? Have you had somebody like me ask you this question before? Do you recommend me doing this or changing my career path because I'm here? And what are the next steps?" So if somebody is looking for a global exposure, you should recommend them, connect them with people who have those global exposure, who are the people they are looking to be, and give them that connection so they can speak to them directly and figure out what are the next steps. Because at the end of the day, you're not supposed to give them the, foolproof solution. This is how it works. But, as a mentor, your network is what you can open them to as well. and that could make a huge difference.
Helpful. Thank you, Winnie, for addressing that point. I think we've come to the close of this discussion. I am extremely thankful and grateful to our global advisors, as well as our participants who've joined us for this discussion. Thank you very much, Hangui, Katrina, Winnie, and Rebecca. It's been a pleasure speaking to you and having your insights on this special occasion. And I wish you all happy International Women's Day. I hope we all go in our immediate environment, in our workplaces, and we impact more lives together. So thank you very much. And I wish you a very, okay, we've got two of our advisors who are about to start their days. So good day to Katrina and Hangui and Winnie and Rebecca. I would say tomorrow should be a great day again. Yeah, bye-bye.